What's up, everybody? Welcome to another weekend roundup here on Touchline Talk. Before I jump in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week on YouTube. Manchester is red, North London is red, Barcelona won the Supercopa. Gonna get to all of it, starting kind of going in chronological order, starting with the Manchester derby. Obviously, your big talking point coming out of this game is that United equalizer. Before I go there, though, there is something else that needs to be recognized in the midst of all this controversy, and that is quite simply that Manchester United deserved to win this game. How they got the goal, they ultimately got him back in and kind of changed how things were going because City's good spell was at the beginning of the first half, or beginning of the second half, rather, there, before that goal equalized. Over the other 60 or so minutes of the game, though, United were the better team. They deserved to win. I've gone back and forth so many times about how I feel about this decision and the goal and the offside situation. Originally, my thought process, as it kind of always is in these situations, is if there's a trained official whose job it is to be the video assistant referee, and they make this kind of decision, I always give them the benefit of the doubt and assume there is a reason why, even if collectively we as the people watching the game, the soccer community, don't understand it. Can you think of a time where there was just, and I mean, maybe there's one or two examples, but where VAR was just completely off the rails and there was no explanation as to why a decision ended up the way it did? You may disagree, but there's always a reason for it. And so that's where I came into this. I had no clue what that reason was, in all honesty, and was trying to kind of rack my brain to figure out how in the world Marcus Rashford wasn't offside. But then you start, as time went on, you start seeing the explanation coming from referees. I listened to Christina Unkel, for example. And Christina Unkel convinced me it was at least justifiable, if not the correct call. A lot of this frustration needs to be directed at the rule itself, which you should read if you haven't, and not the referee, and not the VAR and any of that. It's a preposterous rule. But technically, I've kind of come down on I think it's the right call. The problem is, no player should ever be able to run toward the ball, make defenders think they're making a play on the ball, step over the ball, and change the complexion of the thought process for defenders, for Ederson and that, the way Marcus Rashford did. But the issue is more with the rule and the way it's written than it is with the way the rule is interpreted by the officials. It's a blame the rule, not the ref situation for me. I still don't exactly understand how this ended up as a goal. Because there's some just sort of systematic failure to allow this kind of loophole. But to me, that's what it is. It is a loophole, not a failure of referees. I'm going to give them some grace, and I've heard enough that I've directed my frustration and my disbelief toward the rule itself. United get the second goal. Again, like I said, deserving winners. By the way, Jack Grealish's goal to put Manchester City on top. First shot on target since the second Chelsea game. Because they didn't have one against Southampton. The offense has gone missing for City. And look at the numbers, the points they are producing per game. They are just, you can talk about the talent, and I'm the biggest Holland defender you're going to find. You can talk about how they look invincible on paper. The reality is they just aren't. I keep saying it over and over. And, Holland was dropping deeper to try and kind of get some sort of momentum into his runs to allow him to be easier to find for his teammates, make him more of a target. It didn't work. He was nowhere to be found in this game. They've got major issues. I can't place my finger on what exactly it is. They're just not creating good chances right now. And Southampton made him pay for it, and now Manchester United have. Then you go to the North London Derby. And not all that surprising considering who these teams are and the way they're playing right now. Arsenal get a convincing victory. I haven't really talked about this that much recently, so I'll bring it up again here from a Spurs perspective, especially with the way that first goal happened. The problem with trying to play that way and being so poor in first halves and trying to continually drag yourself out of a deficit is that your margin of error is gone. So you can't have things like the Eric Dyer sliced clearance thing on Boxing Day, and you can't have things like Hugo Lloris letting a ball that was struck directly at him as he was covering his near post somehow find its way into the net. And you can't have, a failure to capitalize on the opportunities they did create in the second half. If you're going to create 3-4 good chances a game, you got to take them, especially against Arsenal. And especially in a game in the first half where, they just had no answer for Bukayo Saka. Tactically, Conte got this. I would have started Perisic. Just the left side of that defense was a mess. Sessegnon, you can argue, you can talk about his positioning and his role in the first goal as well. Not necessarily at the end, but in how did Saka actually get into that position in the first place? They just looked disorganized. Saka was having a field day. They were just kicking him all over the place because they couldn't stay in front of him. It got better in the second half. Sessegnon started to provide a threat moving forward in the second half. And then the second goal, Spurs midfield is just gone. It's nowhere to be found. Martin Odegaard is sitting there in the spot you don't want Martin Odegaard sitting in. It was just tactical meltdown in the first half from Spurs. Again, that stuff cannot... And this is a team with defenders with a goalkeeper prone to major mistakes. And you just simply can't have that if you're going to try and continue to not put yourself in advantageous positions until you're down. And trying to play conservative and trying to launch on a counter. If you're not going to take the initiative, you've got to be way more fundamentally sound than Spurs are right now. On the Arsenal side of this, of course, you're still continuing to grow this gap. This weekend could not have gone any better for you. By the way, both Manchester clubs, who if you're going to consider this a title race, you got to include both of them with what Manchester United are doing right now, what they did this weekend, and the fact that they are right there next to City at this point. Both of them have to go to the Emirates still. Now, Arsenal have to play City twice. But it's to the point where Arsenal basically, as long as they don't lose at home, are going to be really difficult to catch. And even if they lose both home games and at the Etihad, that's still only 9 points you're gaining. This is Arsenal's to lose. And Arsenal fans probably don't want to hear that yet because it's still kind of hard to comprehend this is where we're at. But this is the reality of the situation. This is theirs. There's a long way to go still. But if they can just do what they've been doing, which is not lose at home, and especially if they can beat Manchester United coming out of this North London derby, they are the clear favorites at this point. There's just no way around it. They're playing the best. I mean, you could argue United are playing the best, but United have so much ground to make up. If you're asking me which team I trust more out of Manchester City and Arsenal at this point, I'm there. It's Arsenal. I don't care about City's depth. I don't care about City's talent. They're not putting it together consistently enough. Arsenal are. So, both cities turn red. Arsenal come out the massive winners. United also winners, not just in the game, but in the way that this conversation is changing, the way this title race is changing, because that's what this weekend was. In one way or another, it wasn't going to decide anything, but it was going to reshape the top of the Premier League table and the Premier League title race. It was going to still have Arsenal kind of as the front runner, but Manchester City kind of keeping pace, keeping the pressure on. It was going to have City in a position that if they can win head-to-head against Arsenal, they are very much back in control and kind of allow City to feel like it's back within their control had these results flipped. Or if City lose, Arsenal win, it's just Arsenal running in danger of running away with this thing. It could have. So they're just the permutations of these two games could have dramatically shifted things one way or another, and it went Arsenal's direction because they are just the best team in this league and the best team in the world right now. It is that simple. The other two games I want to quickly mention: Barcelona destroy Real Madrid in the Supercopa to win a trophy. I'm not going to go too deep on this. I've been clear on my feelings about Barcelona. They have so clearly been the best team domestically in Spain this season. I said it after the Clásico at Real Madrid that even though they lost, I came away feeling really confident. I've talked about consistently week to week. They have been so much better than Real Madrid. They just look better. I take the Champions League out of it. It happened. It was a disaster. Take the financials out of it. That's a disaster too. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Barcelona on the field against Spanish opposition this season. There is nothing else to say. They are the best team in Spain. And they handled their business against Real Madrid to prove that point once again. Also, Napoli, that Juventus defense that just doesn't give up goals, gave up 5. This Napoli team is, they're not just way better than everybody else in Italy. It's kind of a shame that they're doing this at the same time Arsenal are because they really deserve more attention. Think about what they lost. Goalkeeper, Koulibaly, Mertens, Insigne. Bring in a completely new crowd. I mean, not completely, Osimhen was there, but some of the key players to this team, either it was Andre Frank, Zambo, and Anguissa, who nobody saw this coming from him, or replacements for club legends or, key players. And here they are just destroying people in Italy. It was a breathtaking performance. They just had no answer for that front line. A Juventus defense that, like I said, has been so good, just no answer whatsoever. And then finally, I also want to acknowledge what happened at Everton this weekend. I am really getting tired of the lack of control of Everton fans, lack of self-control. And of course, this is it's one isolated situation. It's a completely different level when you're talking about making credible threats that lead to the club concluding its, directors can't show up because they might be in danger. That's not what you saw at the end of last season. It's obviously way more extreme, and I don't need to explain that it's just horrendous. But even going back to the pitch invasion while the game was still being played against Crystal Palace really bothered me. And then you got, the person who's trying to get at Patrick Vieira and take some kind of video that leads to that altercation. And now you've got this. I get it. I mean, they blew another lead. They lost a game that they needed to win. They justified being the team that I ranked highest on my panic meter last week. It's incredibly frustrating and disappointing if you're an Everton fan. I get the frustration. It's justified. But this is getting ridiculous in terms of the behavior. And maybe I just overreacted and for whatever reason just got real irked by watching fans go on the field when the game was still being played. And like I said, this reaches a whole new level what happened this weekend. But, I mean, we got to be better. Come on. And then you also saw, Aaron Ramsdale, that situation where it looked like there was some Spurs fan trying to kick him. It's just immensely frustrating. So I wanted to at least bring it up, but specifically this Everton stuff, because we're in January. What happens 2 months from now? It's not going to get much better. It might get worse. And I said at the end of last season, the way it ended with the invasion, with the Patrick Vieira incident, was going to taint, at least for me, the incredible story and the late rally and the togetherness and the sort of getting behind the club to push them over the line and avoid relegation. And now this is a permanent stain that nothing can ever wipe over because you're threatening violence on human beings. I mean, and again, it's not every Everton fan. I get it. I'm just so done with this. So I wanted to bring that up as well. That is the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.